In the 3rd year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand with some of the oracles of the house of God, which he carried into the land of Shinar, to the house of his God. And he brought the oracles into the treasure house of his God. So, again, you guys are going to have to talk. So that first verse tells us when this happened. Jehoiakim was the king of Judah. Nebuchadnezzar came. He surrounded Jerusalem. And then the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. How significant is that? What's odd about that verse, the second verse?
And the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah.
Why is that odd?
Because the Lord, he let them get taken by
Okay,
Babylon.
so God let it, but something even more critical than that. So if the U.S.,
Some of the articles of the house of God.
I'm going to come to that next. So if the U.S. wants to take a small village in Elminia, Egypt, okay, how hard is that? It's not hard at all. They got the weaponry, they got the machines, they got, the people, they got 2 guns that don't even shoot, and nothing. So, I'm serious. Like, it's a small village, so they're just going to go in and take it. Done. So this is exactly the situation. Jerusalem, they had probably 3 cannons that don't work, and maybe a boat is broken. That's all they got. They got nothing. Okay? And then Babel took it. Common sense. Of course they would take it, because they're the world power. Okay, but Daniel reading that did not see it that way. If it was the other way around, if like Jerusalem beat Babylon, now we can say, hey, the Lord God did that. But the Lord God gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. There's something odd about that, don't you see?
Intentional, like God meant for it to happen.
That too, and Daniel seeing the history from the very hand of God. There's a global history that's under the control of God. Like, yes, Nebuchadnezzar had all that weaponry and all that, but the Lord God is the one that let it happen. It didn't matter. It didn't matter. He sees the history from the perspective of the power of God. God let that be, even though they had all this. But God is the one that let it be. Because 100 years earlier, there is somebody else that surrounded Jerusalem and could not take it. His name was Sennacherib. Do you remember that from your ancient history books? He's one of the greatest warriors of all time, an Assyrian. He surrounded Jerusalem, and then the Lord God did not allow it. And he went back defeated. He couldn't take it. So, because the Lord God let it. And that's how we're supposed to see God in 2 dimensions. He's in control of the global history. However, becomes a president, World War I, World War II. All this is in his control and domain. But also our personal history. And that's what we're going to see also with Daniel. With some oracles of the house of God. So that's what Amanda was saying. What's the significance of that? Come on, like the guy came and destroyed an entire country. Okay, he burned the temple from the top down. And you're saying he took some oracles, like it's laughable. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he destroyed the whole country and say, he took a couple of the articles of the house of God. How significant is that?
But other places in the Old Testament, when like the Ark of the Covenant was captured, then all these bad things happened, and they basically were like, we didn't want it, go away, take it back. In this case, though, that's not really what happened. So,
but I think that because they knew the power of like these things.
And God was trying to send a message. That's how it happened. That's how they let it go. But why would Daniel care to say that?
it's really significant. It's like the core of the being.
But the temple was even destroyed.
Yeah.
He probably knew that they were going to take it back.
For 2 reasons. One, and that's really important if you just wake up with me, you can understand how this is. What are those oracles of the house mean? It's the stuff that the house of God, the temple of God uses in Jerusalem. Like, the silver cup, this or that. The stuff they use for the rituals in the Old Testament. What do they mean? What they're symbolic of?
Is there word at least? Or not?
No, but these are the very temple of God. It's the opposite of that.
Okay.
Like they were sanctified.
They're consecrated. They're consecrated to God. They belong to God. They don't belong anywhere else. Okay, they're not supposed to be defiled. They're not supposed to mingle with other nations. And we're going to see later on, Daniel himself is going to be like those vessels. Do you see it? Like he's going to be also consecrated in the heart, so he cannot be defiled like those vessels. And that's how amazing this book is. So, and he put it in the house of his God. Basically, you know, this guy Nebuchadnezzar has a huge ego. So he has this treasure house where every section of the house is labeled with a name. So this is from Judea, this is from Syria, this is from there, this is from here. So yeah, in a little box, he had those oracles in the treasure house of his God. So what is he doing there? How is that significant? That those oracles, that they were consecrated to God and had such a great value, now in a foreign land, they're put in a little case like any other oracles of any other god or any other temple. What's so important about that? What is Nebuchadnezzar doing to those oracles?
He's making them common.
And relative.
Yeah.
They're like everybody else. You're just another god in the market. You're just like everybody else. You're not special. Does that sound familiar? Does it sound familiar to us or not? What do schools teach? What do public schools teach?
All religions are the same.
They're saying we're all relative. That's just your view. That's just what you think. You're not any different from the Muslims. You're not any different from this. That's what you believe. That's fine. That's exactly what Nebuchadnezzar and the others were doing. They were relativizing something that has an immense value. They were relativizing something that belonged to God. And that's exactly what he was doing. John Lennox he's a great man. He tells in one of his lectures, he talks about, he imagines that Daniel and his friends used to walk to that treasure house and look at those vessels and tell them, I remember those days when those vessels had absolute value in the temple of God. I can't wait for them to go back and be used the way they were supposed to be used. So Nebuchadnezzar did what the world is doing to us right now. What the world is doing to Christianity right now. It's just another showcase with another meaning like everybody else. There's nothing special about it. Then the king instructed Ashpenaz, the master of the eunuchs, to bring some of the children of Israel and some of the king's descendants and some of the nobles. So basically, the Nebuchadnezzar saying, when you go to conquer these lands, pick the best ones, the ones who are smart, good-looking nobles, and bring them. Young men in whom there's no blemish, but good-looking, gifted in all wisdom, possessing knowledge and quick to understand, who had ability to serve in the king's palace, whom they might teach the language and the literature of the Chaldeans. So basically, when you bring these people over to Babylon, we're going to basically put them in a school for 3 years. We're going to read that, to teach them how to be Chaldeans, how to be Babylonians. So that way, some of them, the best of the best, we're going to keep in the temple to work with Nebuchadnezzar. And those who are not so good, we're going to ship back to their own country, but they're going to be our ambassadors there. They're going to work for us in that foreign land. And the king appointed for them a daily provision of the king's delicacies and of the wine which he drank, and 3 years of training, basically a school, so that at the end of that time they might serve before the king. Now, from among those of the sons of Judah were Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. To them the chief of the eunuchs gave names. Do you guys know what these names mean? Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. So Daniel, God is my judge. What is Mishael? Who is like God? And then who is Hananiah? Grace. Lord is gracious. God is gracious. And Azariah. God is the one who helps. Is a helper. So all those names had a deep meaning in the very theology of the Jews, of the very theology of these young people. To them the chief of the eunuchs gave names. He gave Daniel the name Belteshazzar. To Hananiah he gave Shadrach. To Mishael he gave Meshach. And to Azariah Abednego. What do you guys think about this move?
They're Babylonian names that give praise to Babylonian gods, aren't they? So it's
Okay.
a way of reframing, like worship this God before, now you're going to be like us.
Absolutely. And what else? That's definitely true. So now changing their focus, their meaning, their name, he's changing their very what? Identity. He's changing their identity. He's trying to change them to merge, to blend, to be just like everybody else around them. And if you look at those very names, they're a reflection of the Jewish name Batu, Nabu, the Babylonian god and other gods. It's the same exact concept, but it's directed toward pagan gods. So, what do you think about that? The whole idea of it changing names and changing their identity.
Well, they want to make them like assimilate into their culture, so they won't rebel and they won't like try to uprise.
Absolutely. And what else? If somebody asked Daniel, what's your name? And Daniel said, it's Daniel. Okay? In that school when they have so many people. And you're like, that's a weird name. What does that mean? He's going to say, the Lord is my judge, or God is my judge. What did Daniel just do? He preached. How about your name, Hananiah? God's gracious. So you're worshiping two different gods. No, it's the same God. He's a judge. He's gracious. He's the one that helps. So what happens here? They're preaching their faith, and they don't want that. That's why there's something so special about us having Christian names. It matters if our name is Anthony. It matters if my name is Peter. It matters if my name is Daniel. It matters because that's part of our identity. It reminds us of who we are. It's very important. That's why trying to assimilate so far, or erasing all those Christian names is dangerous, because that's going to be reflected in our very identity. Let me ask you another question. But you guys I'm not sure if you're shy or you're mad of I don't know. But you shouldn't be shy, Yani. This is not... What else Babylon is known for? I promise I'll get you a gift card. Cheesecake gift card.
Revelation. Like what I mentioned about.
Not Bishoy, no. But not that, no. What's Babylon is known for? What did we just talk about? Names and identity. What's Babylon known for?
Like calendars and dates and maybe.
But biblically.
The tower. Bible is usually the evil.
The tower of, what's it, the
Shinar,
tower?
but Shinar is the same thing, isn't it, in the tower?
That tower, yeah. But it's too late for the gift card. So the Tower of Babylon, what is that about?
Languages.
This is the very same city. This is the same very place where they start to get the language confused. Okay? So Babylon is remarkable for two things. They were trying to build a huge building to reach God, but what was the point? You know what was the purpose of doing that?
Be like them.
To make name for ourselves. That's what exactly it says in Genesis. To make name for ourselves. Okay? And confusion of the languages happened there. And the very same Babylon is the world that we live in right now. Everybody's trying to make a name for themselves. Nobody's trusting God to make a name for them. That's what this world is all about. And confusion of the languages. Look at the same words that we use today have totally different meaning. Even the word marriage. Same word, but has a different meaning now. See, that's called the confusion of language. Language is confused. It's not the same anymore. It's not the same language anymore. And that's all Babylon. That's the world that we live in. That's why in the book of Revelation, what Bishoy is talking about, you're going to say Babylon, the great city, has fallen. Babylon is this pagan world that we live in right now. It's pagan. It's no longer a Christian world. Make sense so far? Or I'm losing you? Okay. Let me see. Okay. But Daniel purposed in his heart that he would not defile himself with a portion of the king's delicacies, nor with the wine which he drank. Therefore he requested of the chief of the eunuchs that he might not defile himself. This is beautiful about the whole idea of purposing in himself. I made the commitment that I will not do that. I made the commitment that I will be different. I'll be faithful to Christ. I'll be faithful to everything I do. It's so easy to create excuses. Our youth come up with the idea, well, the world is hard, there's temptation, there's this, everybody does it, and this and that. It's lame. It's lame. You have a guy who was alone in a country with another 4 guys. He could have every excuse in the world to do what he wants. Has no reference. He was 15 when he left his country, but he purposed in his heart that he will not defile himself. he became the very oracles of God. He saw himself as a consecrated vessel that cannot be blemished, cannot be defiled. He saw himself that way, and that's each of us supposed to see each other that way, that we're a consecrated vessel, we're a consecrated oracle of the temple, just like that we cannot defile ourselves to everything around us. We can't. And that's how Daniel purposed in himself, that he would not do that. And trust me, if he started there, just eating just a little bit of meat, it doesn't mean anything. Just a little bit of a cheese, who cares? Just a little bit of wine, there's nothing else to drink. By the way, wine at that time was nothing bad, because right now we have so many carbonated beverages and juices. Back then they didn't. So wine was a very acceptable drink to drink, but they used to cut it with water. Like 2/3 wine, 1/3 water, so it wasn't like... But anyways, that was a very acceptable drink. So the whole idea is not wine as like wine is forbidden. That's not... Wine was just a drink, but he would not drink that drink. He would not drink from their drinks. He would stick to what he was taught. He purposed in his heart. That's what I want you to remember also from today. He purposed in his heart not to do that. Now God has brought Daniel into favor and goodwill with the chief of the eunuchs. And that's Daniel's starting with that goodwill. To purpose in his heart, God returned it with grace. He gave him favor and grace in the eyes of whom? Of the people around him. So that way when he makes a request, it's more acceptable and doable. And the chief of the eunuchs said to Daniel, I fear my lord the king, who has appointed your food and drink. For why should he see your faces looking worse than the young men who are your age? Then you would endanger my head before the king. He's going to chop my head off if he sees you like you're not looking as good as you should, because he's going to think I'm eating all your food or I'm selling it or something. So Daniel said to the steward, whom the chief of the eunuchs had set over Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah, please test your servants for 10 days, and let them give us vegetables to eat and water to drink. And let our appearance be examined before you, and the appearance of the young men who eat the portion of the king's delicacies. And as you see fit, so deal with your servants. What did Daniel do? He went to test God, right? Test God, not like test him or tempt him. Test him and test his faith. Test his experience. He knows that God will not let him down. And Daniel did the first clinical trial. Seriously, it's a controlled clinical trial. Let him eat this food, let us eat this food, and test after 10 days and see how we look. It's a very, very, very scientific. And that's how we can test God, by trusting him. Sometimes we don't. Sometimes we think it's too far to trust him. But I know a lot of people that say, I know that God will take care of this. I know God will not let me down in this. I know this will be fine. Because they have that faith, they have that trust. We need to have that trust likewise. So he consented. So that guy consented with them in this matter, and he tested them 10 days. And at the end of the 10 days, their features appeared better, fatter in the flesh than all the young men who ate of the portion of the king's delicacies. Thus the steward took away their portion of delicacies and wine, and the wine that they were to drink, and gave them vegetables. As for these 4 young men, God gave them knowledge and skill in all literature and wisdom, and Daniel had understanding in all visions and dreams. So, yes, they were smart and noble, but it was the grace of God that made him able to attain that knowledge and that wisdom. And Daniel was very well versed in visions and dreams. Does that sound familiar? Who else was very well versed in visions and dreams? Joseph. And as we go through that book, you're going to discover amazing similarities between Daniel and Joseph. Daniel was in a foreign country. He was faithful. Joseph was a foreign country. He was faithful. Daniel rose to be the top of the empire. Joseph rose to be the top of the empire. Joseph is a patriarch. Daniel is a prophet and one of the greatest prophets. Do you know when Pilate asked Christ, who are you? Not Pilate. Hananiah, the chief priest, asked Christ, who are you? And Christ said what? You said that I am he, and you will see coming on the clouds of heaven. Do you know who said that? Daniel, word for word. Christ was quoting Daniel, his last words. Christ was saying, I'm the one that Daniel talked about. Can you believe it? That's how amazing Daniel is. Of all the prophets, that's the one that Christ quoted. And the Son of Man you'll see the Son of Man coming in the clouds of heaven. From Daniel, word for word. That's how amazing Daniel is as a prophet. And God made him so. Now, at the end of the days, that's when their schooling period was over. When the king had said that they should be brought in, the chief of the eunuchs brought them before Nebuchadnezzar. Then the king interviewed them, and among them all, none was found like Daniel, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. Therefore they served before the king. And in all the matters of wisdom, understanding, about which the king examined them, he found them 10 times better than all the magicians and astrologers who were in all his realm. Thus Daniel continued until the first year of King Cyrus. And this is the end of chapter 1. You're going to notice something neat here, that even though Nebuchadnezzar changed Daniel's name, what happens after Nebuchadnezzar goes? Do we know Daniel by the name Belteshazzar? He survived. He survived the empire. Daniel's name persisted because the name was internal, it was not external. Do you see what I'm saying? It was not just a matter of name. So Daniel as a name, as an identity, survived the entire empire. And that empire was brought into judgment, as we will see in chapter 3. Because of the very things that they did and not taking those articles seriously, as we're going to see later. Any questions about